Hello everybody and welcome back to our How to Create an Avatar series. This is episode 2 where we will be beginning our avatar in Blender. So like I said in the previous video, we're not going to be completing it in Blender. We're not going to be putting everything in Blender, but this is going to be just the start of it. I do want to break up the portions of the series into smaller videos so that I can cover more tips and tricks on certain parts. So this video is primarily going to be getting ourselves familiar with Blender, with how to navigate it, how to import things. We're going to import just a few things. We're going to get things sized and scaled properly, lined up. We'll cover all of that. So it's just going to be more of an introduction to Blender itself and kind of starting to put things into the project to start building our avatar. And then we will continue that on throughout a few different videos so that we can cover kind of more specific parts of building the avatar individually. If you aren't familiar with what I'm talking about, if you don't know what Blender is, you don't have any assets downloaded, I would highly recommend you guys head back to the video just before this, which was kind of an introduction to the series. But I had talked about how to download Blender, some of the other programs that you're going to need an add-on for Blender that I'm going to be using religiously called Cats, as well as talking about how to find assets and how to read asset pages to kind of know the stats that you're going to be looking at, as well as the terms of service and the importance of that. So if you're not too familiar with anything that I just mentioned, or you're not really too sure how to start, or you realize maybe you don't have Blender installed, I would suggest heading back to the previous video where I cover that, and that will help you get started. But if you have watched that video, or if you're coming from the previous How to Create an Avatar series, then we are good to continue. So like I said, this one's going to be more of an introduction to Blender itself. But just as a quick little reminder, just in case anyone maybe doesn't remember how to look up assets, maybe you already have Blender installed and you have Cats installed and all that, I would recommend going to jinxie.com to check out assets and get them downloaded, get them saved to a folder that's going to be easy for you to navigate, get everything unzipped if it's in a zipped folder, and then we are good to move on to starting everything in Blender. So before we actually start putting things together, I do want to cover how to install Cats, since that's a add-on that, like I talked about in the previous video, it's something that I use quite religiously, and we will be using a lot throughout this Blender part of the series. So let's go ahead and work on getting that installed into our Blender. Alright, so like I talked about in the previous video, I personally am using 3.0. If you're using any of the older versions of Blender, your UI or layout might look a little bit different. If you're using any of the newer versions, it might look different. Just kind of a small recap from the previous video. It's not super crazy important on what Blender version you're using, other than things might look different. The layout might be different, buttons and shortcuts might be different. But as far as actually putting the avatar together, the process is pretty much the same across all Blender versions. Just know that some of the buttons might be a little different. That being said, I know my colors are different. That is because I have a theme installed on my Blender. It didn't change shortcuts or buttons or layouts or anything like that. All it did was change the colors. So if your colors are different than mine, don't panic. You've done nothing wrong. I just prefer this color palette because it kind of matches my branding, and I like the muted out gray. So don't panic if anything shows up as a different color. But this is what Blender looks like whenever you first launch it. I have not done anything. I opened Blender and this is what it pulls up. You can hit General from the new file section if you want, or you can just click out of that little pop-up box and you now have a new Blender project. Before we do anything, I want to go ahead and install Cats, or at least show you guys how to install Cats, and then we can start working on navigation and kind of getting ourselves a bit more familiar. So to install the Cats plugin, what you're going to want to do is you're going to come up here to this top corner and click on File, or is it... No, I'm sorry. You're going to click on Edit. Click on the Edit button, and down here at the bottom it says Preferences, and I think it should default you to the add-ons, but if not, just go ahead and click this button right here, and then you're going to hit this Install button, navigate to where you had the Cats plugin downloaded. Now, the only thing whenever it comes to downloading Cats is with assets, so like your hair, clothing, head, body, whatever you're going to put on your avatar, you will want to unzip those. because Blender can't read those as zipped files, and so it should unzip and it'll say something like FBX or OBJ, something like that. But for cats, you actually, whenever you download it, go ahead and leave it zipped. If you've unzipped it, if you haven't deleted the zipped version, then just use that. And if you did delete the zipped version, just re-download it so you have that zipped version. Because installing Blender add-ons, it actually needs the files to be zipped. So navigate over onto your download section where you have that zipped file of the Blender plugin cats, or cats plugin GitHub, whatever it's called, on your computer. It might be called something different, but just go ahead and click that. And it should pop up here, and then in Blender, because I think the download is named something different. I might be wrong, but it'll pop up and it'll say 3D view Cats Blender plugin. If you don't see this, you might have to use the search bar and type it in, and then it'll pop up there. All you're going to want to do is make sure that it is checkmarked, and you should be good to go. If you don't see the check mark, there might be a button down here that says install or enable, but as far as from what I have always known it to do, it should just be that check mark. All you got to do is check mark that on. You should be good to go. So that's installing Cat. So now let's go ahead and look at Blender. Before we do anything, I'm going to just come over here. I'm going to turn on my screencast keys, and they will be down here in this bottom corner. I try my best to remember the buttons that I'm clicking to say them verbally for you guys, but it is a lot of second nature habits for me, so there might be a few buttons that I forget to call out that's what I'm pushing. So if that's the case, just keep an eye down here. If you need to rewind the video, I deeply apologize, but at least the screencast keys are down here so that you guys know what I'm clicking. So for avatars, you don't really need any of this, so I just drag and drop, highlight this. This is a camera, a light source, and a cube, and we can just delete that because we don't need those for our avatar. To like swirl around in your scene, you can hold your middle mouse and you can move it around like this. You can also click up here. These are what's called axes. So this is Y, X, and then you can't see it whenever you swirl around, but this up down, I guess like vertically, is going to be the Z. So this would be us looking like if we had an avatar in here at the top of the head, and then if you do negative, it would be from the bottom of the feet. The X and the Y are like the side versions. So that's how you can kind of, you can snap it to just this like straight on view if you want to, or you can swirl it around, whichever's easiest for you. And then to pan like side to side, you actually hold shift middle mouse, and then you can move your blender around this way. And that's pretty much it when it comes to navigating in Blender. Of course, the wheel in or out will let you zoom in or out. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Pretty easy to navigate. You'll get more and more used to it as you go. So I am going to head over to Cats and get this open up. This is how I like to leave it open. We're not necessarily going to use all the buttons that you see there, so don't stress out about that. That's just how I'm used to having it open. So to start importing, so you found your assets and you found your base in your head. I am going to be using Zenpia's eGirl base and Nessie's latest head. For my avatar, you don't have to use those. Use whatever you want. But those are what I'm going to be using. When I finish the avatar, I will go through and create a Google Doc of the credits list, and I'll update the descriptions if it's not already updated once I get that doc finished, so that you guys have the credits of everything that I'm going to be using. But there's two different ways that you can import. So you can either use Cats, import up here, or you can go to File, Import FBX. Now for vrchat, most creators give our assets as an FBX. On occasion, like truly once in a blue moon, you might have something that's an OBJ file. But these are all the file types that Blender can import. Just know that if you have something that's coming in as like an STL or a GLB or any of these things, it might import different. It might import with lights, cameras, materials attached, materials not attached, a million different tiny little parts. I'm not too sure. So if you have something like that, just know that it might import different, and it probably wasn't created for vrchat. But as long as commercial rights, or whatever the rights are for the asset that you're using are for what your project is, you're fine. Just know that it might be different. Most like 90% of avatar creators and asset creators for vrchat are going to give you an FBX. So you would click this one, and then you would go to your folder and pull up your assets. So I'm going to do that right now. I'm just going to navigate over to my folder real quick, and then I'm going to click it. So give me just a second. And we're going to give it a minute, and it will pop it in. There it goes. And Zenpia actually created her base to have a default outfit on it. She gave it some heels, which this is the flat foot version, so, not fitting right now. And a different yoga outfit, which I'm just going to delete at least one of them. I'm going to currently leave on this other outfit because I don't want YouTube to yell at me for having body parts exposed, even if there's no texture on it. I don't want to get in trouble. So if your avatar doesn't come with clothing, it's totally normal. It's just Zenpia included it in her base as a gift. And I'm also going to delete these heels because I won't be needing those. You're going to be seeing all these little triangle and diamond shapes and circles. This is what is called your armature. Basically, this is what lets your avatar move in game. So whenever it's running, or if you move your arms, if you have like full body or half body, this is what allows that. So these are what are called bones, and that mesh is what the 3D actual like thing is called. It's called a mesh, is what's called weight painted to the bones. So basically, we're telling Blender and Unity and all of the programs, when this bone moves, that mesh moves with it. That's really important because later on we are going to be talking a lot more about weight painting. We're going to be doing some weight painting ourselves and sculpting to make things fit better. So I just kind of wanted to throw out that terminology. That way you guys are aware of what I'm talking about when I say mesh and armature, bones, and weight painting. We don't really need it shown. You can leave it shown if you want while you're making your avatar. I personally despise having my armature shown, so I'm going to keep it toggled off majority of the time. If you want that off, just come over here to your side. This is what's called the hierarchy or the collection. And you can just hit this little like eye symbol next to armature, and that'll toggle it off. Same thing with anything else that you want to hide. It won't delete it from the project. It just takes it away from being visible. So something else that I would like to talk about now that we've had something imported is these buttons down here. Most of this for creating an avatar you're not really going to need, but a few things that are going to be important later. There's this bone icon, which I believe on normal Blender, I think both of these are green, but there's this bone icon and this little stick figure icon. We're going to be using both of those later, most likely whenever we go to do our weight painting and like adding our own clothes and stuff. You might want to have this viewport display like extended down, and then this will pop up stuff whenever we're ready for that. But I just wanted to point these areas out just in case, because we might not be using it in this video, but we most likely will be later. So I just wanted to kind of draw your attention over to that section so that you're familiar with it ahead of time. Something else that I would like to point out is if we click on our body, this little like triangle shows up in place of where those bones were, and this little like beach ball symbol. These two are going to be very, very important throughout our creation. So this beach ball is what is called the materials, or the material viewport. I don't remember all the exact names, but this is where our materials live. And what that basically is whenever we change what's called the viewport here in a second, we can see what the texture of the body is going to look like. But right now it's pink. We will handle that in a minute. If you ever see pink like this, it basically means that Blender is searching for that texture, but it can't find it. And that's okay. Very, very normal. But yeah, so we're going to be playing around in the materials section quite a lot, as well as this triangle. This is also something very important I want to bring to your attention before we start importing a whole bunch of stuff, because this is also something we're going to be using quite a lot. this is where our shape keys and our vertex groups live. Vertex groups are these little guys up here. That's basically Blender's way of saying that, okay, for the, middle toe bone, that this area of the vertices of that mesh, so like I was saying in the previous video, the 3D meshes that we're working with are consumed of what's called vertices. So that's not overly important for you guys to know right now, but again, something that we will be using in the future, so I just want to point it out to you, as well as the shape keys. So the shape keys are not like the vertex groups, which has to do with weight painting. Shape keys are this beautiful, wonderful, magical tool that we can use to customize our stuff. We can make different head shapes and body shapes with it, as well as it's a really fun little cheat that I use quite a lot to help with clipping. Weight painting can be so frustrating. It can be really, really challenging. And a little trick that myself and a few other creators will do is shape keys. And so you can make a custom shape key that if you're having a really hard time with something not wanting to weight paint properly and you're dealing with clipping, then you can set a shape key. And what that basically is telling the mesh that when this shape key is on or turned all the way up to 1 to activate, so you can have that mesh like deform when that shape key is on, and then when it's off, it's normal. Which again might be going over some like too advanced right now. It might be going a little too far into the tutorial and past the Blender section, but I again wanted to point it out and kind of familiarize y'all with what this is, since it's something that we're going to be talking about and doing a lot of. So just kind of for example right now, if we do this heels blend shape here on this base, and again, not all bases are going to have the same exact vertex groups, the same exact shape key. So if you see different stuff, not a big deal. But if we drag this all the way up to 1, see, she has a heels blend shape. So basically what that is if I want her to have on tennis shoes, her feet can be like this, and then later on in Unity, I can say, okay, I want her to have heels, and we'll make it to where whenever she has heels on, her feet move to this position using this shape key. So it's something really, really cool, super duper fun. You can also do things like this thigh, and you can see it's making the thighs a little bit bigger. You could do, what's something that I can show easily? The legs a little bit thinner. So it's really, really cool. Heads will have a lot of shape keys, and we can take a look at that whenever I get the head imported. I use shape keys a lot to edit my bases or my heads, but when it comes to the head, which again we'll take a look at in a second, be very careful with deleting any of the shape keys or messing with them and like leaving them up to 1, which we'll cover in the next video, which is going to be about making our own body sculpts and head sculpts. But because the head shape keys are what actually lets your avatar talk when you talk. So that's something that we can talk about a little bit later, but that's another use of shape keys, is helping us talk. So we'll cover that later. But if you ever do need to, like if you're messing around in here and you find something that you don't want, you can just click this little arrow, and, oh, I'm so sorry, click this little subtraction button, and that will delete it. So just be very careful when it comes to deleting shape keys. Make sure it's something that you really want to get rid of, but that is how you get rid of it. And then of course the plus sign will add a new one, but we'll cover that more in detail later. So now that you know how to navigate Blender, you have somewhat of a familiarity with the sections that we're going to be using with the armatures and the materials. The last thing that's super important is this little wrench icon. So this is what is going to be called the modifiers. And what that basically is like this body, like we had said, is attached to this armature. So it has an armature modifier on it. One of the most frequently asked questions I feel like I see in my Discord server is somebody's going to add a shirt to their model, but maybe that shirt didn't come rigged. It didn't come with an armature, or maybe it was rigged and set up for a different base. And so they deleted the armature, because that's something that I do a lot, because we don't want extra bones when we don't need them, because that can make weight painting very difficult. So maybe they deleted it. what you will need to do is make sure if they go into like pose mode and they're like, oh, hey, Chin, my shirt's not, following my body anymore, even though it's attached to my body, it's weight painted, everything. Come and check this armature section and make sure that there's an armature modifier on it. We will be using other modifiers as we go throughout this series, and as well as a lot of my other tutorials. Modifiers are super duper helpful and very important. But yeah, so we're going to be covering that a lot, but that's why that armature modifier is there. And if you ever don't see it, there's a solid chance that you're going to want to add it back. So just make sure that you don't accidentally delete that one or anything here on your body base. You want to make sure that that's important. Just wanted to toss it out there because I didn't want anyone to panic that they accidentally added something maybe that they weren't supposed to. That is definitely supposed to be there, and is something that we will be playing a lot more with in the future. So now that you have, all the bases covered, how to work Blender, about the materials preview, we've looked at where the armature buttons are going to be, which we'll cover more of that later. We know about our shape keys and our vertex groups, all that kind of stuff. Let's go ahead and before we start importing anything else, let's go ahead and move on to our actual material viewing. So up here are all these different like little balls. You're not really going to be using any of these buttons throughout basic avatar creation. If I end up changing them, I'll do my best to talk about why I'm changing them. I typically use this like grayed out version, and this next one, which is the material like actually viewing. It's called the viewport shading material preview. So if we click on that, our body is pink. We'll talk about it in a second, but we can see let me hide the armature. You can see our lovely, wonderful little yoga outfit that Zenpia made for us. It has its texture on it, right? It's got all the wrinkles and the folds, and it's pretty. And okay, cool. But sometimes your assets might not import with their texture like our body here. So if it imports pink, or if it imports funny, or it's too shiny, or maybe it has like weird triangles on it, that's all stuff that we'll cover as we go through it and we run into those issues. But that's where that little beach ball in that material section comes into play. So this texture that I keep referring to is basically an image, normally a PNG or a JPEG, that is projected onto and fit to your mesh to make it look properly, right? So sometimes it shows up pink. Like I said earlier, Blender just can't find it. So if that ever happens, we're clicked on our body, there's our material right here. It says base color, click this little folder, and it popped up where it thinks those images are supposed to be. And what happened was it was looking for base color 1, which is not in here because Zenpia renamed it later. So that's why it can't find it. Not a problem. We'll just click base color and open image, and ta-da! Now we have our skin finally back onto our body and everything is good to go. So if you ever want to play around with like a lot of assets come with different textures, maybe different colors or patterns, or in this case, different skin tones, you can always just click this folder and change it out to whatever you want it to be. Something I said earlier was if it's like too shiny or not shiny enough, so something might import like this, right? And if that's how you want to work with it, totally fine. Before I talk about adjusting materials, something important to note is your materials aren't overly important in Blender. Because in Unity, you're going to be setting up your materials again, and you're going to be actually making them how you want them to be in game. So when it comes to Blender, you don't really have to have your materials set up how the end result is that you want them to be, especially because, well, it doesn't really matter. You can't carry all that over into Unity anyway. But also in Unity, there's going to be a lot more settings and options and things that we can do to make the materials even prettier than we could achieve in Blender. So it's not super important. Some people I know prefer to just work in this grayed out section. They don't care to look at materials. It doesn't matter to them. It's not going to matter later on in avatar creating anyway. It's literally just serving the purpose of letting you see and visualize what the avatar is going to look like later on in the road once you get it in Unity and closer to being in game. So it's literally only there for your enjoyment. If you don't want to mess with materials, you don't have to. You can leave it all pink, you can leave it in the gray view, whatever you want to do. I personally prefer to leave my material viewing on, and I do prefer to set it up as close to how it's going to be as I can, not something you guys have to do. And we'll cover that more later, but I will be changing to the shading tab and adding what are called maps. So like a normal map or a roughness map, just to give it a little bit more like 3D effect. And it's not necessary at all. It's just what I prefer to do, because throughout my creation process, I like to be able to see the avatar, how it's, you know, closest to I can get it to how it's going to be finalized in game, so that I can maybe change up anything, or if I'm like, oh, I don't really like this color palette, maybe I can change that, so that once I get to Unity, I have more of a set idea of what textures I am using, what I want, as well as if I want to change out any assets, stuff like that. So while this is not required for avatar creating, if you're like me and you prefer to see it, some assets will come in super shiny like this, or maybe the metallic is up too high, or everything is low and it looks really, really flat. Play around with these settings down here in this color space. Like I said, it's not really going to affect your avatar down the road. So you can play with the roughness. The specular is what makes it look more plasticky. It's basically, you know, saying like how much light, how much reflection is your mesh going to pick up. And then metallic, of course, is going to make it more metal. So feel free to play around with these if you know, feel like something's too shiny or not shiny enough, or, you know, or whenever we go to set up our metal and we go to add our chains and stuff, we might want to, you know, make a metal material if it doesn't already assign one, because sometimes it will. So just wanted to kind of point that out in case y'all are like me and y'all prefer to have things set up to be somewhat relevant to how it's going to look in the end. Totally not necessary at all. Feel free to play with these. Something that we are going to be talking about once we import our head here in just a minute is this alpha. A lot of times, and another one of the most commonly asked questions I get is whenever people import the Amelia head, very, very popular head, has beautiful eyebrows and eyelashes, but whenever people import it into Blender, it is a black square. So we will be talking about how to fix that with our alpha, and we will be talking a little bit about the shading tab and how to fix that. Again, if that's not something that you care about, totally not necessary to do any of that, but if you want to see your avatar in a somewhat like normal or finalized state, then we will be covering that later. That being said, now that we're familiar with our materials and how to adjust things if we want, let's go ahead and get our body imported. Or I'm sorry, our head. We have our body. Let's go ahead and get our head imported. So I'm going to click import up here, or you can go through the other way, totally up to you. And I'm going to navigate over to where our head is. Aria. So I am using the Aria head by Nessie. I'm not using her V2. I prefer V1 for this model. So whatever head you're using, we'll import that as well and give it a second to load. All right, and our head has loaded in. And this is what I was talking about. Sometimes whenever you load things in, they come in kind of funky looking with their textures. So I think my best guess is that with this head, Nessie has an alpha. So basically it's alphas is transparent maps for the eyebrows and the eyelashes. And for some reason, it tries to apply it to the head. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on our head. In our materials section, we're going to scroll all the way down. Not quite all the way down. Under our little color section that we were playing with is a section called settings. And it says blend mode alpha. We're going to click that and change that to opaque. Ta-da! So this is something that we will be messing around with a lot whenever it comes to fixing the eyelashes, is the different alpha modes, like alpha blend, hashed, and clip, all do different things. And then opaque is basically saying even if there is an alpha map attached, it's not going to show any kind of alpha whatsoever. So I will fix that. I'm going to ignore the pink right now. Personally, I am not very good with doing seamless necks, and for this avatar, she is not going to have one. So I'm going to delete this, but for Nessie's head, or at least for this one, she did add this on so that if you want to attach it, and she does have it set up for like the e-girl bases, that it'll be a lot easier for you to just move the head down and work on attaching that. I personally, am not very good with doing seamless necks, and I'm not very comfortable with it quite yet enough to teach it, but there are plenty of tutorials out there. So if that's something you want to do, definitely go check it out. It, you know, makes it to where there's not a line between the head and the neck, and it's all like fluidly attached like our real life head and neck. So if that's something you're interested in, feel free. I just wanted to explain why I'm going to be deleting that, because that's not something that I am doing, at least for this avatar. So moving our head down, we're going to come over here and we're going to click on this arrow, but the only problem is it's not showing up. Scroll out and it's going to show up down here at the bottom. So this is important because this is considered the world origin. That's super important for later on. I don't really know how to explain it right now, so I guess we'll explain it more later. But we're just gonna move that down. But if you see, there's this little dot that's moving with it. That is basically saying that's the origin of the head, which you're gonna really want, I guess, in the end, whenever you finish your avatar, is you're gonna want everyone's origins to be at world origin, which is 0, 0, 0. And that might not make a lot of sense now. It's something we'll talk about more as we go. But just know that, you know, if you see like the dots are all in different spots down here, it's okay. And there's a way that we can fix it. If you're like me and you don't like scrolling all the way out to move something, what you can do is you can right click, and right here it says set origin, and I do origin to geometry, and that moves it to where your cursor with your arrows is in the center of whatever it is that you're trying to do. So now we can move it up close instead of having to be scrolled out. So let's position it where I think I want it, which is somewhere around here. In my opinion, though, it is a little bit big, and that right there, the hairline, is something that we will fix in a moment as well. That's a material thing. But I do feel like it's a little bit big. You can also move it forward and backwards, of course. But I think I want to scale it. So to scale it, there's a shortcut key. You can click S, and you can scale it that way. Or over here, you can click this button, and then you can scale it. Just know that if you're scaling it on any of these, it's scaling it just to that axis. If you want to scale like the whole thing uniformly, make sure to grab that white circle and scale it that way. But I personally use S to scale and just drag in or out. And somewhere around there, I struggle really hard with head size. I find zooming out helps. And once we have hair on it, that's going to help a lot too. Now, something else that's very important when it comes to scaling is you want to make sure you are clicked on your armature, so it'll highlight the bones and it'll highlight over here. Make sure when you're moving and scaling that you're scaling the armature. If you accidentally scale the head and it's highlighted the mesh and your bones aren't highlighted, this is what's going to happen. This is going to be a really big problem because basically, like I said earlier, this mesh is weight painted to those bones. So if we go to move the eye bones, it was weight painted with the eyes being down here, but now they're up here. So it's going to make them stretch real funny. So if you ever have stretching like that, most of the time it's a weight painting issue, but one of the first things I would check is turn on your armature if you have it hidden and make sure that it's not, you know, off like that. So that's why it's super important whenever you're doing anything with like resizing or positioning to make sure you're doing it on the armature so that your mesh moves with it. And I think something like this is good. That looks like a good size to me. Maybe a little bit big, but when we have hair on, I think it'll be easier for us to check. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off armature now that we have it all settled. And something else before I turn it off is you'll notice there's this dotted line now going down to the bottom. I'm going to ignore it for now, but what that is because we moved the origin of the asset, the head. Up here, that's where the orange dot is, but that orange dot is trying to be at the world origin, right? So that's something else to keep an eye on whenever you go to export your avatar once you're done in Blender, is turn on all your meshes and check for this, because if you have that dot there, it's going to cause issues in Unity. The reason we're not going to fix it now is I would like to show you guys a little trick later on how to very quickly fix that and fix it for everything all at once. So we're not going to worry about fixing it right now. I'm just going to go ahead and hide that. With Nessie's head, she included all these, let me just turn something on so that you guys can see it. She included all these different like teeth bits and like I forget what they're called, but like these little like metal parts and like piercings and stuff for the teeth, which is super cool. If you're wanting to use that, go ahead and merge it to your head. If you're not wanting to use it, go ahead and delete it. Now, if you are wanting to merge it to your head, like I would like to add these gauges to the ears. I'm not entirely sure that I would, but for example, let's say that I want to add them. So what you're going to do is I'm clicking on these. You can click them here or here. And I'm going to shift and click on the head. And the reason that that is super important, because I don't want to do head and then these. Do you see those different colors over here? If I do here and here, that's highlighted a little bit lighter. And then if I do it backwards, the gauge add-on is highlighted in the lighter color. That's super important because whenever we go to merge, you want to make sure that you are merging to the main object. So the head is the main object, while the add-on is not the main object, if that makes sense. And the reason that is because of these shape keys. So Nessie is a godsend. She's a wonderful creator, and she sets up her stuff beautifully and to where it's really, really hard to mess it up. But some, older assets or some creators maybe didn't think to set things up, or maybe they, didn't think that it would be necessary. So sometimes there might not be all the shape keys, I guess is the best way I can put it. So let's say, she didn't add on all of these. These are all for face tracking, by the way. And these up here where it says VRC dot is how the face talks whenever we talk. And let's say that she accidentally left those off on this gauge earrings without, thinking anything of it. If we do head shift click onto the ear add-on and those aren't there, it's going to basically tell the head to follow the ear add-on. So that means that even though those are on the head, sometimes, not all the time, the head won't carry over those shape keys that it needs. If that makes sense. It's kind of one of those, like, it doesn't happen all the time, but it can be a problem if you are merging stuff to the wrong parent. If that makes sense, that's what I call it, a parent. So if we merge the head to the ears, it doesn't happen all the time, but it very well could happen. It has happened to me countless times that something might not carry over. The weight painting isn't carrying over, the shape keys aren't carrying over, and now my head is acting weird. Blender, the mouth isn't moving when I talk, whatever. So I personally recommend to be very cautious whenever you are doing merging, to make sure that the last thing you're clicking when you're holding shift is highlighted in lighter color and it is the object that is the main object. You can also do control. Control does the opposite. Oh, no, it doesn't. I thought you could. Never mind. Okay, never mind. You can't use control. I guess I'm thinking of something else. Ignore that. So let's go ahead and merge these two. So let's do ears, merge to head, right? That one's lighter. So you're going to do control. If you hover over here, nothing's going to happen, right? So where your mouse is important when it comes to merging. You want to make sure your mouse is hovering in your main window here. So Control J. See? And now the ear add-on is gone. It is on the Aria head. And if you look, it is all one mesh now. It's not two different items now, which is great. Okay, sorry for the weird cut there. I spoke incorrectly and I wanted to cut that out. So when I was trying to get at, and I had it completely backwards, I wanted to talk about the shape keys. So like I said earlier, it's something that can be very helpful when it comes to like clipping and doing body modifications or head modifications. I'm going to use these gauge add-ons for a really solid example of how to work with shape keys and to start setting up our head. So if this is set to 0, then the ear on the head is a normal lobe. It's how it's supposed to be, right? But since we added this on, we actually want this blend shape to be set up all the way to 1. And this counts for any blend shape. So with Nessie and a lot of other creators, and Pia has it on her base too, they have things like, let me see, what's a good one? Like this eyes soft. And see, it changes the eye shape. So these blend shapes are there to help people with making their heads or their bodies customized a little bit without having to learn sculpting. We're going to do both. We're going to cover it more in the next video, but that's why shape keys are so useful and kind of what I was talking about earlier. So we want this to be set up to 1, and then if we ever want to, in Unity, later down the road, we can set that back down to 0, turn this one up to 1, and those gauges are gone and they have normal ears, which is something that I would really like people that use this avatar in the future to be able to have. So, since we want this to be the default though, we're going to turn this one all the way up to 1 to hide that normal earlobe. We're going to click this down arrow and we're going to hit apply selected shape key to basis. This is going to basically apply it as the default. And then we can, adjust it later. The reason why I prefer to add to basis is so that whenever I'm exporting or I'm in Unity, I don't have to worry about setting that up as the default. And I don't have to worry about accidentally messing up that blend shape, because if we leave this set to 1 and we do any edits to the face, those edits will copy over to this blend shape, and we don't want that. So you can leave it off if you want and just worry about setting that up in Unity later. I prefer to go ahead and apply it to the basis. That way it's something I don't have to quite worry about, and I can still set it up later just in a different way. And I'll set it up to more so focus for whenever people want the gauge off. So it's going to take a minute to load. While it's loading, if you don't see that apply selected shape key to basis button, that means you do not have cats installed. And if you do think you have it installed, you have it downloaded, it's on your computer, make sure to go back to that edit and preferences section and make sure that it is checkmarked and it is enabled. I thought that was just a normal thing in Blender. I did not realize that was a part of cats until somebody had told me from my previous tutorial that they didn't have it. And we found out that they did not have cats enabled. So that is a cats only button as far as I'm aware of. So if you don't see it, that is why. Which again, if you don't see it, you don't want to use cats, not necessary. You can always, set that up later and still use those blend shapes to give people the option to have these kinds of ears or the normal ears later on in Unity. So again, not necessary, just something to kind of a quality of life moment. So now that you know how to apply the selected shape key to basis, let's say, but I want to go back. It adds it right here. It'll be underneath all of the VRC, which is what we call visemes, to make your mouth move. It's right there, going to be below those, and you can crank it up, and now it does the opposite, right? It goes back to how it was before. So don't ever worry if you, I don't know what I clicked. If you ever apply something and you want to go back, you'll have that option there. So let's go ahead and fix up this texture issue since it looks kind of funny, and then we can start working on wrapping up this tutorial. So let's head over to let's go to our shading tab. We're going to scroll in. This might look like a lot. It is not, I promise. So this is the shading tab. This is where basically these are called nodes. This is basically where Blender says, all these different textures go to this spot, right? So like here's our base color for our head, which you can see over here on the side, and that's being dragged over this image to our base color, and then alpha, normal, all that kind of fun stuff. So if you ever have something showing up kind of funny like that, and you've already checked in your materials section, you're like, it's set to opaque, it's still acting kind of funny, check for a normal map. So this is something that Nessie actually had talked about, and she put out a fix for later. I just hadn't downloaded it at the time of the fix. I downloaded it before, that the normal map was messing up the head. So all you have to do is click here and drag away to disconnect. And now that normal map is gone, as well as you'll see the ears are a lot smoother now. So if you ever have something kind of funky looking like that, check for a normal map. A lot of the times the normal map may be for like clothing or something, and it's supposed to be for the shorts and the normal map imported for the shirt. Or in this situation, she had a test file attached to it, which she later changed. And so, you could go through and you could add it if you wanted to. You could, same thing as you do in the materials section, you could click the folder and you can click where her normal map is, and you can add it if you want. I personally just am not choosing to add it, but it's right here if you want them. You can add them. and you could just drag that back and add it back. But right now I'm going to leave it unadded and yeah, be good from there. As far as the skin colors matching, I'm going to be using a face texture by Yin Yang that they made for Nessie's head, because I am using, or I'm going to change out the body texture to a Yin Yang body texture as well. But if that's something that, you know, you are wanting to use somebody's makeup texture, maybe it doesn't match to the body, you can always go into like a photo editing app like Photoshop or something and adjust it from there, or Substance Painter if you're familiar with that, and adjust it, and then just come back in and fix it here. You know, just re-upload your new image. So just wanted to toss that out there, that in the next video those two will probably be changed because I'm going to be using some paid for textures that I bought, and we'll so I just want to let you guys know why those are going to change. So I think we're going to go ahead and end this tutorial here, and in the next tutorial we're going to talk about fixing these eyelashes. And the next tutorial's not, the reason I want to put that in the next tutorial is the next tutorial is not necessary for creating an avatar. So y'all are welcome to skip it if you want. The next tutorial video is going to be about sculpting and using those shape keys as well, and to change the face shape and change the body shape to be something more fit for the style that I want this avatar to have. So it's a cool way that you can customize the heads and the bodies to be a little bit different from the default, to match your style or to make it stand out, or just to give your avatar a little bit more personality. And in that tutorial, I'm also going to cover at the very beginning how to fix these eyelashes, which is a common issue. All it is basic, and the eyes, is that Blender's not reading the alpha map. So the same thing for the Amelia head, which I know a lot of people still use, and the eyebrows and the eyelashes will pull up like this and it'll just be a black like box. So that's going to be at the very beginning of the next tutorial if you want to fix it, since materials are not necessary for avatar creating in Blender at least. Then y'all are welcome to skip the entirety of the next video if you want. If you don't want to do any sculpting, you're happy with the default head, the default body, you just want to, you know, kind of work on and focus on kit bashing, which is putting everything together, skip the next video. If you want to learn how to customize or how to fix that, then that will be covered in the next tutorial. Alrighty, so that wraps up our day 1 in Blender. So in this tutorial, we discovered and talked about how to import, how to move things around, as well as scale things around. We talked a little bit about cats and how to get that installed. We also took a look at the Blender layout and what sections we're going to be focusing and what buttons are going to be, you know, being used for our materials and our shape keys, our bones, our armature, stuff like that. So we covered a lot of kind of just like learning the terminology and where everything is and what it does, as well as we got our body and our head in Blender. They are sized correctly. We fixed a texture issue on the head. We also applied our first shape key, so we did cover that, so that you guys know at least how to apply them. And like I said, in the next video, we're going to be doing sculpting, so we're going to be editing the head, the body, fixing the eyelashes, and adding the eye textures. So the next video is not necessary, but it is super helpful, especially if you want to get more familiar with shape keys and want to learn how to make your own shape keys. I highly recommend checking out this next video, as that's what we're going to be doing and talking a lot about. But if you're not interested in any of that, you just want to move on to adding your hair and your clothing and all that kind of stuff, then you're welcome to skip that video and move on to the one after that. So I think that is it for now. As always, if you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know in the YouTube comments down below, or join my server and I'm happy to help there as well. Yeah, I think that's it for now. So I will see you guys in the next tutorial.